Yeah, hopefully everybody is doing well. So for those of you guys who are, super familiar with Evolve Move Play, you're going to hear some of the kind of the ideas that are really fundamental to us in this one. But we're unpacking them, I think, in a really powerful way today. And then as we go forward into the next couple ones, I'm really excited about how we've articulated some of these ideas in totally new ways. So yeah, really excited to get started here. Go ahead. So this is the what we're doing today is whole food movement, or how we train a human being like a human being. Our next one is going to be talking about movement as part of the solution to this broader meaning crisis. So what does movement practice have to tell us about the meaning crisis, and how can it help us be a solution? How is it related to it? How is it that we have lost touch with meaning, and why might that be? Lost touch with movement, and why that might be really important about why so many people feel alienated and like they have a lack of meaning in their life. Then we're going to be looking at a roadmap. If we recognize what movement can do for us, well, how do we build it, right? Where do we go with it? And the last one, we're going to be kind of sharing with you guys how we suggest you guys start that journey. So that's the map of what we're going to be doing. So stick on the call today. At the end of the call, we're going to be giving away some free merchandise, right? And then on our last call, our second to last call, we're going to be giving away our access to our EMP Academy. So really excited about the EMP Academy. We've just basically rebuilt our whole online system in the background so that we can give you guys a better, easier to navigate experience of how to grow yourself through movement, and lots of really great resources to do with that. So we've got our EMP merchandise today. We're going to be giving away access to the Academy. And then on the last call, we're actually going to be giving away access to one of our retreats. So really excited to have one of you guys joining us next year, presuming that COVID allows, but we're really excited to be able to do that. So let's get into this. Here we go. Here's the merchandise. Here's some of the stuff on our store that you can take a look at. So please drop comments in the thread and we'll answer them at the end of the call. So I'm going to be giving this talk, but we're going to answer your questions at the end. We'll have a nice long question and answer session. So make sure you're ready to ask any questions you have. Cool. So here we are. Why we need a movement revolution. Presumably most of you guys agree if you're here, but we're going to go into some of the reasons for that. And again, here's the journey we're doing. So today we're going to talk about kind of how the fitness industry has failed, what whole food movement would look like, and why that is really evolution's guide to optimal human movement. So I want to start today by telling you guys a little bit of a story. So I want you to imagine that there's a zoo. In this zoo, they have a jaguar, a wolf, and a cheetah. And they have kind of small cages. There's not a lot of interesting things in there. And each of these animals is becoming unfit and unhealthy and carrying too much body fat and is very listless, and they're not very engaging and interesting for the zoo visitors, and they seem kind of miserable. And so the zoo figures that they need exercise, they need to get fit. So they hire a personal trainer to come in and work with these, right? And he's a really smart young guy. He's very well educated, knows all the evidence-based literature about how to produce hypertrophy in muscles, how to produce maximal strength, how to produce, increasing your VO2 max, and how to get people flexible. And he's just going to apply these to these animals, right? He doesn't know anything about the animals in particular, right? All these studies that he's basing his protocol off of are mostly done in mice, and some of them are in rats, and a lot of them are in white Western male college students. But he just assumes that they're going to work for these animals. So he decides that the first thing that you need to do is build an aerobic base, right? Aerobic base is the most critical element of health that we gain through fitness. So he decides he's going to have these animals do a 3-mile run, okay? So he goes out for a 3-mile run with the wolf, and the wolf easily runs 3 miles. It gets back, it's panting a little bit, but it's excited. It could happily go for more. Then he goes out with the cheetah, and the cheetah starts running, and the cheetah's very happy to run, but pretty soon the cheetah starts tiring out and dragging and isn't very excited about it. And he makes it back, and isn't super pleased with the experience. Then he takes the jaguar out. The jaguar is happy to run for about 30 yards. And then he's pretty much having to drag this big, heavy animal the rest of the 3 miles. And he gets back and he sees that the jaguar actually has sores on his paws from running. And he's like, you know, he's surprised. He doesn't understand what's going on. So then he starts strength training the animals. And, you know, he builds a weight sled and he has the animals drag this weight sled around. And, you know, they're not super interested in it, but he figures out ways to motivate them. You know, he can get them to chase things, to play tug of war. And the jaguar, you know, it starts getting fit. Its muscles are rippling. It's big. It's powerful. The cheetah, on the other hand, is not having very much of a good time. The wolf's a little bit more into it, but pretty soon the wolf kind of injures himself. You know, and then he tries stretching these animals because they need range of motion. They're kind of stiff. And well, he discovers that the cats are very flexible already and they have zero interest in doing this. And they're not excited about doing this. So he pretty much just has to give that up. So he's really confused and he decides to call his buddy, and his buddy is an animal behaviorist. And he asks his buddy, like, what's going on? Like, why can't I get this to work? He's like, well, you didn't look at the behavior of the animals. These animals have very different adaptations. They evolve for different movement lifestyles, and you can't give them the same nutrition. A wolf is a predator that chases its prey down over prolonged periods of time. It uses its endurance. So it loves to run, and it's designed to run, but it's not especially strong, and you can't make it that strong because it doesn't have the structure to put on tons of muscle. And a cheetah loves to run, but you can kill a cheetah by making it run for too long. Its body overheats really quickly. It's a sprinter. Also, it's very gracefully shaped. It doesn't have the type of muscle insertions that allow big muscles. It can't get super strong. And then the jaguar is on the opposite end. The jaguar is incredibly strong. It's an animal that takes on prey multiple times the size of itself. And, you know, it jumps into rivers and kills crocodiles and pulls them out and drags them up trees. So you can make it really strong. But it's an ambush predator. It's not designed to run very far. It never runs for a long period of time. And so you can't train it the same way. So this is a parable. This never happened exactly. But I tell this story because I use it to illustrate that we can't treat an animal outside of the context of what that animal evolved for. The animal needs to be trained like that animal. If you want a wolf to express the best capacity and to be the healthiest wolf, you have to train it congruently with its nature. The same thing is true of a cheetah, the same thing is true of a jaguar. And my argument is that the same thing is true of a human being. You need to train a human being like a human. And what we have right now is a failure to understand the nature of ourselves as human beings, what will develop us, and what we're actually motivated to do. And despite the fact that we have a $30 billion fitness industry in this country, we have epidemics of obesity, we have epidemics of low muscle tone, we have poor muscular development, we have weak coordination, we're not very strong, and people are afraid of movement. They're afraid that they're going to get injured, right? I think of this as agoraphobia of the body, right? In the same way that people, an agoraphobic slowly becomes more and more anxious about more and more places that they can be in the world. All of the things that are fundamental and natural to human being and movement and all of the capacity that you have, more and more are afraid of it. So when people see parkour, they think, oh my God, that looks amazing, but I would break my leg. I would bust my head open, right? And what we're doing is just expressing what a human being evolved for. So that fear is a huge thing that's holding people back. And finally, we also exist at a point where we have epidemics of depression, anxiety, and even suicide. And I believe that mental health is deeply connected to physical health, way more than we realize. And we're going to go very deep into that in our next lecture, but I wanted to highlight that here as well. You cannot separate the body from the mind. And when we have ill health in the body, we're going to have ill health in the mind. And when we don't trust our bodies, we're not connected to our bodies, we're going to see this. And it's not only that we have these epidemics of depression and anxiety, that's despite the fact that we have epidemic usage of drugs, right? You know, a lot of you guys know about the opioid epidemic, but we're seeing pharmaceutical drugs being prescribed at rates that they've never been prescribed before for psychotropic effects, right? something like 1 in 5 American women is prescribed some kind of psychiatric medication. So 1 in 10 Americans overall. This is not the sign of a healthy population. So we're doing something wrong. And I think the fitness industry has failed because we're like that personal trainer, right? We can go in and look at how a muscle adapts or how a cardiovascular system adapts, but that's not the fundamental problem, right? Our problem is not understanding how to get people to have better VO2 maxes or bigger muscles or run faster or be stronger. Our problem is that we don't know how to motivate people, right? We don't know how to nourish them with movement. We don't think about movement in the right frame. So we need to make another step. And I just realized, are we recording? I hope we're recording.
We're recording.
We're recording, okay. Thanks. Couldn't see it on my end. Cool. So I wanted to explain this idea that human movement is actually nutrition. This is an idea that I got from Katie Bowman. I know many of you guys are probably fans of Katie's, and she's an amazing thinker. Her book, Move Your DNA, is great, so I highly recommend it. And when I first saw that concept, I was like, oh, that's a great analogy. But it's not an analogy, it's literally true that your body responds to physical, to movement in the same way that it biomechanically responds to food, right? So think of something like osteoporosis, right? Why does your bone become weak and porous? Well, one reason is that you lack food nutrients. You lack chemical nutrition coming into your body, something like calcium, right, or collagen. But the primary reason that people get osteoporosis now is not because their cells didn't get enough chemical nutrition. It's because they didn't get enough physical nutrition. They didn't get enough load nutrition. So people are now having epidemics of osteoporosis in older age, and people are breaking their hips because they failed to load the bones through movement. So you know that every cell in the body responds to being loaded, right? And at the level of the cytoskeleton, you can stretch the cell, you can compress the cell, or you can smear the cell, and the cytoskeleton becomes stronger. And the organs and the machinery of your genetics and the proteins that are put out are going to be different, right? The transmitters that are sent out are going to be different, and they're going to be different along the same types of pathways that you get from actually the food that you ingest, right? So calcium and movement are both nutrition for bones. We can also look at something like your circulatory system, right? So you have a heart that pumps blood through your body that takes nutrition into your cells. But actually your body relies on movement. It relies on the muscles to pump the blood back towards the heart, right? So there's action happening all the time. And when you are moving, you're improving that circulatory system. And then there's the lymphatic system, which is basically like the cleaning system of the body. It's fundamental to your immune system. And that is completely moved through the body via muscular action. So if you sit, if you lay down, if you're on bed rest for a prolonged period of time, you suffer the problem of potential blood pooling, which can create toxic effects in your body. But the same thing's happening with your lymph, right? So you need movement to nourish the body. You need movement to move your circulatory system around. You need movement to load your cells. You need movement to create hormonal signaling pathways through the body in the same way that you need proper food, okay? So I believe that we are stuck in a movement nutrition paradigm that is parallel to the food nutrition paradigm that was called nutrientism. So at one point, we realized that, for instance, limes and oranges and lemons could prevent scurvy. And then we were able to isolate vitamin C, right? So it's a micronutrient called vitamin C, and it can prevent scurvy alone. It is the primary reason why a lime prevents scurvy. And so that was when we started isolating out micronutrients and macronutrients. And we started to believe that we could produce healthier food than nature provided by understanding what the macronutrients and micronutrients were in the food and optimizing them for human consumption. Okay. So how many of you guys have heard of Wonder Bread? You can see some nice Wonder Bread over here. Okay. Wonder Bread comes out of the 1950s, or maybe slightly earlier, and it is fortified with 14 vitamins and minerals, right? And that's supposed to make it healthy. Now, everyone knows now that Wonder Bread is not a very healthy product, but when it was first introduced, many people, in fact, thought it was a healthy product, right? They were convinced that those vitamin and nutrients are there, therefore you're getting the nutrition you need, and you can have this nice white, super soft bread, which has always been very prestigious. It's hard to have soft white bread in the past. I think the craziest example of this is that doctors at one point believed that that they could create formula that was more nutritious than mother's milk. Right? This is the foundational nutrition of your whole life, right? And we now know that that's not the case. The best formulas that they make seem to not be able to completely replicate the nutrition that a mother's milk creates. There's some research that shows that, for instance, IQ is decreased by about 5 points. Do you guys see the, did you see that red on my screen?
Somebody named Fabian has been coming in and editing with these lines, green and red.
How do we stop that? Can you get that, make that stop? Justine, unmute yourself for a second. Tell me if you know how you can stop that.
Hey, I'm here. Yeah, I haven't seen it being done yet myself because I was on another screen, but I'll keep an eye out for this.
There's a marker on the screen on the left-hand side in green that shouldn't be there.
I see a little bit. Yeah, okay, got it.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so back to my point. So we know that what is in mother's milk is not completely replaced by formula. And I don't want to shame women who are having struggling to breastfeed. I know it's hard. There's more. I know it's hard sometimes, right? My wife struggled with it. My sister struggled with it. And, you know, if you have to use formula, you know, please don't be ashamed. But there's a reason why the traditional nourishment is more powerful. And what's really interesting about this, and another point that Katie Bowman brought up, is that, in fact, not just the chemical nutrition that's different between breast milk and formula. It's actually the physical nutrition. Your palate and jaw and teeth and even your whole cranial structure are built off of the forces that are applied to the skull during suction. So if you want to have an adult who has a healthy craniosacral structure, healthy jaw and palate, it's actually important that they engage in the sucking action that is provided by the breast. And the breast is not replicated by the nipple that is on that bottle. So here we're seeing that physical nutrition and chemical nutrition, again, are inextricably linked in some way in this activity. So, and you can see that they're both important for effective development. Another one of my favorite examples is the sun, okay? So how many of you guys have been warned to not get too much sunlight because of cancer? Let's give me a little show of hands out there, right? Okay, so here we go. So here's something, but we now know that, of course, there's some things that you need from the sun. And we know that there's certain health impacts that we get from the sun. And one of those is vitamin D. So vitamin D deficiency is a big thing that a lot of us are facing. I'm here in the Northwest where it's gray, you know, we get like 35% sunshine a year, so it's gray a lot of the year. And so vitamin D deficiency is a big problem. And we ask people to supplement with vitamin D. Some of you may know this, but actually vitamin D deficiency has been very strongly associated with worse results when you're infected with COVID-19. So it's particularly relevant right now. So you need vitamin D. So one way to solve this is to take the supplement, the isolated nutrient, vitamin D, and avoid the nourishment, the thing that we traditionally got it from, which is the sun. But it turns out that you can't simply get the sun in a pill form and get all of the impacts in the sun. The sun is something much more complex than just vitamin D. So for instance, early exposure to early morning sunshine is one of the primary things that sets the rhythm of cortisol and melatonin in your body. So when you wake up and you're exposed to the sun, your melatonin is shut off and your cortisol rises, and that begins your circadian rhythm. So without your circadian rhythm, without sun exposure, your circadian rhythm is deranged, and we know that sleep is one of the most important nutrients. It's like it's the most anabolic thing in the world. If your sleep is not happening correctly, this is a big problem. Also, there's a chemical, there's a hormone called luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is one of the first in the chain of hormones that drives your sex hormone production. So when you're exposed to sunlight, your body is actually stimulated to produce luteinizing hormone. This might have something to do with like seasonal effects traditionally about when we would be optimized for reproduction. But we like to have, and we are healthier when we have healthy levels of sex hormones. They're very important. And we know that steroids are male sex hormones. They're based off of male sex hormones. So when you're not getting those, essentially you're preventing your body from going through its natural process of producing the most anabolic characteristics that you can. So once again, the sun is more than just vitamin D. I've seen figures that say there's as many as 10 nutrients in the body that are stimulated to be produced by the sun. And we don't know how all those things interact. There's research that shows that supplementation with vitamin D doesn't necessarily even get you to maintain it in the body, because it's a hormone that your body produces. And so when it's taken exogenously, it doesn't necessarily produce the same effect as when it's created endogenously. So once again, we cannot simply take a pill and achieve the same impact. And this brings me to this point about how I believe that physical nutrition and movement nutrition are combinatorial explosive problems, right? We're not going to ever be able to create a perfect human diet from chemical bases. We cannot isolate out every piece because we don't know how many there are, and we don't know how they interact. So there's complicated problems and complex problems. A complicated problem is a problem that may have many moving pieces, but there's a precise solution to. So building a rocket is a complicated problem. But then there's a whole class of problems where the space that the problem creates is essentially infinite. And so there's no one way to solve the problem. And so we have to try and find our ways through that, through heuristics, through some biases. So this is an example. How many of you guys have ever played Connect 4? Okay. If you haven't played Connect 4, it's pretty similar to tic-tac-toe. But the cool thing about Connect 4 is that it has a algorithmic solution. If you have the first move and you understand the game, you can win every time as long as you don't make a mistake. So it's very fun until you figure that out. But once you figure that out, it's not very fun anymore because you know exactly kind of what's going to happen. Chess is a different monster. Because of the way that the chess pieces can move, all of a sudden you have this combinatorial explosion. So in chess, there's approximately 30 legal moves per turn that are available to you on average, and approximately 60 turns per game, which means that the pathways that a chess game could go through is 30 to the 60, which is on the order of the number of electrons in the universe. So functionally, trying to figure out one optimal pathway through the game of chess is impossible because the search space is infinite. And this is the same thing with food, right? And sunlight and sleep. All of these things are having an impact on you, and you cannot isolate out all the pieces, and you cannot understand how all the pieces interact. And I believe the same thing is true with movement and movement as nutrition. So when we all understand now that Almost anyone in the nutrition field will tell you that you cannot make your diet healthy by taking supplements. That no amount of vitamins and minerals and protein powder is going to reach a healthy diet. You need to eat whole foods. You need to eat foods that that are ancestral, really, right? You need to eat foods that you need to eat the orange and not just the vitamin C. I think of these as nourishments, traditional nourishments. We need to eat the nourishing things, not just the nutrients as isolated. So what I'm going to suggest is that movement is the same way, and that what we're stuck in right now is people trying to take movement supplements instead of eat whole food movements. That a bicep curl is a movement supplement, right? It's a way to achieve a single thing. That the way we think about movement is it cardio? Is it strength training? Is it flexibility training, right? Those are kind of the three macronutrients of physical training. And they're like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And you're supposed to get a balanced diet of these three things. But I think that running on a treadmill, doing machine-based body building training, and stretching is like eating soybean oil, cornstarch, and protein powder as a way to create a healthy diet, right? You've got all the macronutrients, but you've missed everything else. You missed all the micronutrients, all the things that make things truly, truly nutritious for you. So, what are the whole foods of movement? This is an example that I wanted to share with you guys, okay? The climber versus the pull-up, the calisthenics guy, right? It's something I noticed years ago. When I started training in trees a lot, my hands became very different from the hands of the people I was working with. At the time, I was a CrossFit coach. And so I was working with a lot of CrossFit athletes. So just for a second, all of you guys who do a lot of ring training, barbell training, or calisthenics on bars, take a look at your hand and see if it looks something like the hand that's seen here. And you can see that we have a large buildup of callus at the bottom of the fingers and a little bit on the fingers. You can't see it very well in this picture, but if you looked at the center of that man's hand, his skin would probably be thin and soft. And that's very much like someone who doesn't train at all's hand. But if you look at my hand, and I'm gonna stop my share for a second here. I don't know if you got how well you can see this, but my hand is calloused from here to here. And there's a slight buildup here, but it's not excessive in relationship to what we're seeing. So why is this important? Well, you have this problem of proportional weakness or proportional strength. So imagine for a second that you are trying to pull on something and you're using a chain. Okay, so you have a nice strong chain. And then on that chain, you're going to attach some bathroom tissue. Okay? And so now you're going to try to pull on that chain, and then you want the bathroom tissue to pull on whatever you've attached it to. What's going to happen? The chain is going to cause the bathroom tissue to tear. Right? That's what happens when a strong tissue interacts with a weak tissue. Right? The force coupling is bad. And I actually think that this isn't just true of the hands, this is true of every tissue in the body. Remember that idea that your cells are all getting strengthened in the way that they're getting loaded. Now the problem is that when we train in a very isolated way, we create very strong pathways of tissues and very strong motor control within specific areas, and then we leave other areas of the body kind of completely blind to us. We haven't nourished, right? So what's happening right now is that in team sports, we have basically the fastest, most explosive, most powerful generation of athletes that have ever been seen, and they're also the most injury prone. Right? I've talked to my friend Michael Tankovich and Patrick. I'm drawing a blank on Patrick's last name, but Patrick is the sports scientist who works for the Seattle Seahawks, and Michael is one of the physical therapists there. And they've talked about, I've seen this idea that ACL tear rates and Achilles tear rates have something like tripled in the last 20 years. And I've talked about this to them, and they've said most teams wouldn't give away the information that would allow you to know if that was fully true, but it seems approximately right to them based on what they've seen in the industry. So think about that. We're preparing athletes to be bigger, stronger, faster, but they're becoming more injury prone. What I think is happening is that we are preparing certain tissues in certain ways, and we're not nourishing the whole body physically. And so we're creating these proportional weakness problems. So an athlete who's an NFL player, he has a huge set of demands on his body, changing direction, moving fast, moving slow, decelerating. He goes into the gym, he gets really strong, he jumps, he lifts weights, but he does it in very static patterns because that's what's common in the fitness industry, right? He squats in the same way every time. And so now he develops this incredibly strong quad that can lift 600 pounds. But while he's been training in that off season, all of this motor control isn't there anymore. And there's some tissues in his knee that haven't been stressed the way that they need to be stressed. And so as that tissue atrophies, the next time he pulls on it hard with that quad and he's changing directions in an NFL game, pop, there goes his ACL. And that's the mechanism of all these non-contact injuries that we see. So we need to nourish our body with whole food movement. It's going to make us more robust. It's also going to make us more adaptive. Imagine for a second, an elite rock climber versus an elite calisthenics athlete. Which one will adapt better to the other sport, right? Great rock climbers can do lots of pull-ups, but great calisthenics athletes cannot necessarily, would generally just can't climb high grades of climbing. So there's much more to it. We get more when we train using the things that our bodies evolved with. Okay, I'm trying to screen forward, but it's frozen here. First time with the PowerPoint, guys. So forgive us if we've got a little bit of a there we go. Okay. Try this again. Okay, so here's another example of something that I think of as a wonderful whole food movement. Rough and tumble play. Think about how many physical positions your body is going to occupy in this. How many different relationships of force you're going to ask your body to produce. And of course, you're also getting rapport, connection, all of these things. My basic hypothesis is that if we look at play, we look at how human beings are intrinsically motivated to move across every culture in the world, then we're going to find that those are the things those are signals or evolution's guide to the types of movement that we most need, right? Another example is stick and ball sports. I've talked about this idea that the team sports in many ways are not serving us well as a culture, but being able to throw things, strike things, and move things are fundamental aspects of what makes a human being such a unique movement, right? Everywhere in the world, people love stick and ball sports. And there's a reason for that, right? We need the ability. Striking things with a stick is one of the fundamental things that a human being has as part of its repertoire as a predator, right? Being able to throw things at animals, fundamental to our repertoire as a predator. So all these stick and ball sports are really important to us. Roughhousing is really important to us. Games of chase, right? These are things that we see everywhere in the world. Climbing. This is a couple of, these are my children compared to a primate. So one of the things about climbing is that it's incredibly ancient for us, right? We are climbing animals developmentally before we are walking animals, right? So if you think about the evolutionary history of how human beings developed movement, we started as fish, and then those fish learned to kind of use their fins to scoot themselves around on the land, and that became our quadrupedal gait. And then eventually we started quadrupedaling up onto things. We learned to grasp and clasp those things and climb. And the climbing of animals like squirrels and the animals like very small monkeys is not that dissimilar to the quadrupedal motions of small rats and things like that. And rats, of course, can climb too. But then eventually we became more and more capable of a variety of movements, right? Animals that are arboreal are the most agile animals. And the ability to orient the torso upright as opposed to horizontally and to hang is something that we evolved that pre-adapted us to the ability to walk. So bipedal walking is something that we became capable of because of climbing. And if you look at it ontologically in the ontogenically, right? Sorry, not the knowledge of being, but the knowledge of development. Ontogenically, we develop the ability to pull ourselves up and to traverse along things using our hands before we can do bipedal walking. So some of you guys, I'm sure, have read the book Born to Run, and there's some good arguments there about how human beings have very specific adaptations to running. And running is an important aspect of what human beings do. But the idea that running is somehow a complete picture of human movement is really misguided, right? We have been climbing animals for much longer, and children have an intrinsic drive to climb trees everywhere in the world. It's always fun. So primates have been climbing animals for something like 90 million years, it looks like. We have been climbing in the trees since the dinosaurs were still around. So we need to climb. There's some really interesting research that shows that hanging is actually incredibly important to the health of the shoulder. That when people don't hang, when they don't have their arm overhead and have it tractioned, it's much easier for the shoulder to develop impingements. And that many of the structural problems and motor control problems that we develop in the shoulder are things that tend to go away if we just practice hanging. So being able to hang is a fundamental aspect of being able to move. And this is another idea I want you guys to think about, which is the longer that something has been around with us evolutionarily, the more important it is. So throwing is really fundamental to human, to our predatory capacity as human beings, right? Human beings, our ancestors were primarily probably fruit eaters, something like 6 or 7 million years ago. And then over the last 6 million years, we became more and more effective predators. And first we were probably scavenging meat from other animals, but eventually we learned to take on other animals. And we didn't do it by growing big claws or big teeth like other predators. We did it by hitting them with rocks and sticks, and eventually by throwing things at them. So other primates can throw things. Chimpanzees can throw, but nothing can throw with anything like the same force and speed and accuracy that a human can throw with. And throwing things is also continuous biomechanically with striking things. So humans are not nearly as strong as chimpanzees. Chimpanzees are about 2.5 times as strong as a human being is, but we can create a kinetic energy potential through the elasticity of our body, actually more so than a chimp. So we can hit much harder with our hand or with a stick than a chimp can relative to our strength. It's because of that ability to accelerate things through this kind of throwing mechanism. However, throwing can be very stressful on the shoulder. On the other hand, climbing, which is what evolutionarily pre-adapted us to the ability to throw, is something that is very, very healthy for your shoulder. It really helps us develop healthy shoulders. So an example of climbing is a facility a human has that if we don't express, it's probably going to hurt us. Walking is a capacity. If we don't express it, it's probably going to hurt us. Throwing is a capacity that is very important to us evolutionarily, but is less necessary to nourish the body. So what does all this look like? What does it mean to move like a human being? How do you train a human being? As I've said, we need to look at how people play all over the world. When we understand what intrinsically motivates us, we have a guide to what evolution sort of thought was important, right? You guys may have heard this joke, why does sex feel good, right? Well, if it didn't feel good, we wouldn't do it, and then there wouldn't be any babies, right? So evolution will build in an intrinsic drive to do something if that thing is important to you. So when we look at the types of play that are universal across culture, what we see is a signature of the movements that we needed throughout our evolutionary history. So we explore climbing, we explore throwing, we explore jumping, we explore running and chasing, we explore stalking and pouncing on each other and wrestling and roughhousing, because those were fundamental to the human movement adaptation over time. So if we want to know what a human's movement training should look like, just like the jaguar, the wolf, and the cheetah that we talked about at the beginning of this, that's the best guide to it. That's evolution's guide. So when we look at the research on play, play is divided into 3 primary areas, right? Physical play. So physical play is divided into locomotive play, manipulative play, and rough and tumble play. So we have kind of simplified that in our language with Evolved Move Play into body to environment play, right? This is about exploring our relationship with the environment. And we think this is a huge missing piece of movement culture, right? In the broad sense of how we move as a culture, and also in the narrow sense of as people are thinking about movement, what are they thinking about? So much of the movement that's put out there as, you know, progressively training and thinking about movement is done on flat ground. It's done in essentially a cage, right? It's as if you imagine taking that cheetah, or that, let's say the jaguar, because jaguars are very agile animals that have to be able to navigate very complex environments. That jaguar has been stuck in a cage for generations and generations. He doesn't know what a jungle looks like. And he's trying to invent a way to move that expresses all of his capacities as a jaguar, right? That's great, but it's still the cage, right? The jaguar is designed to be able to swim, right? Carry things through the water, to climb trees, to be able to carry things into it, to jump, and to solve the environment. And the environment is something so important and so rich for us as human beings. So it's the same thing for us. We didn't evolve all these physical capacities to just express them on flat ground. We evolved them to help us solve the environment, to help us become connected to the environment. So we believe if you look at track and field, if you look at gymnastics, if you look at Ninja Warrior, if you look at obstacle course racings, all of these are expressions of how does the human being move effectively through the environment. And we believe that parkour is the most deeply connected to kind of the root source of how humans evolved to move, right? It's the least artificial, the most natural. And then of course, when you take that and you actually apply it into the natural environment, that is the most rich way to access how the human body evolved to move, to nourish ourselves with the whole food movement of how do we interact with the environment. So the next one is playing with things, right? Human beings are tool-using animals. There's a reason why balls and sticks come up all the time. And so we need the ability to move heavy things. We need the ability to throw, the ability to catch, the ability to swing an object, the ability to manipulate an object. Things like crafting are great elements of movement culture, right? Or gardening. This can be part of your movement culture. Part of what we need to do is get rid of the cultural script that exercise is something that is done in a gym, right? And that it only counts when you're in the gym. We have this ridiculous phenomenon that there are gyms out there. There are gyms out there where people take escalators to go to the cardio room, right? The only movement that counts is that 45 minutes when you're on the stair stepper, and then you take an escalator off the stair stepper, right? We need to be able to broaden ourselves outside of that perspective. And things like crafting are beautiful ways to express this, right? We evolved to have this capacity to work with our hands, and it's also intrinsically rewarding. Think about how often kids love to build forts, right? Well, this is something you needed to do all the time, evolutionarily. You had to go out, move from one camp to another, set up a new camp. Right? Humans need shelter. So this is an important aspect of it. And then body to body. So I love these two pictures. So this is a couple of our students, Mara and Laura, who are wrestling. They're playing a basic wrestling tag game. And over here is my daughter, Audrey, and we are doing basically acro yoga. So I was gonna sit up here and catch her. She was able to stand on my hands as I sat up. Stand up with her. So she's developing so much kinesthetic awareness through that, and that ability to cooperate and to read and to feel another person's body. The same thing's happening over here. So we look at cooperative movement and competitive movement and how we can do that. And there's more in that as well, right? Of course, because there's cooperation through like working together versus dance. But all of those things are deeply important to really fully nourishing your body. You'll notice that, how do you, just for a second, take a look at these images and what do they call up for you emotionally? Take a look at these images. What is the emotional valence of these? Now, some of you may look at this picture up here of Kyle jumping and feel fear. Like, oh my God, he's gonna get hurt, he's gonna break his leg. If I did that, I'd hurt myself. But a lot of these probably call up the experience of fun, of pleasure, of joy. But if we showed you someone on a Nautilus machine doing bicep curls, what would you feel, right? If we showed you somebody on a treadmill, right, what would you feel? So we have this idea that human beings are lazy, right? That we're essentially energy-saving animals, and this is why we don't move. I think there's some truth to that, right? But I also think that we're just ignoring the movements that are actually engaging to us. We're missing where the motivation is. And not only are we missing it, we're screaming that we need exercise in one place, and then in other places we are intentionally crushing the very things that would get us the exercise that we need, right? So in schools, we put children down to sit for 6, 7, 8 hours, and we punish them for moving. And children who have a high need for movement are labeled ADHD. I was labeled ADHD. Probably 50% of all the leaders in the parkour community were labeled, oh, the ADHD. And then we put them on Ritalin. Ritalin is in the same chemical class as amphetamine, right? We're giving kids speed because speed shuts down the part of the brain, the neural circuitry in the brain that is associated with play. Okay, so we are chemically inhibiting our children's drive to play. We are socially inhibiting our children's drive to play. And then team sports. These sports are wonderful sports. I don't want anyone to get the idea that I think that soccer is bad for you, or football is bad for you, or baseball is bad for you. I think all those are great sports. But we have adopted a culture around team sports that is bad for our children and bad for us and our capacity to move. Because we have applied an adult standard of winning to children's play. And at the same time, we're preventing them from playing. So Jaak Panksepp is an amazing researcher on play. He discovered that within rats, if you let them play, get together when they're juveniles, they'll play, and they'll engage in rough and tumble play. They'll wrestle and they'll try to pin each other. And when whichever rat is larger is going to win generally. And if it's about 10% larger, it can pretty much win every time. Now, what happens is if you allow those rats to play multiple times, what you'll find is that if the larger rat does not make it so that the smaller rat can win at least 30% of the time, the smaller rat will lose interest in playing with the larger rat. So there's a tendency, there's a necessity to try to create some sort of self-handicapping that will make the play rewarding for both players and then will continue to play. So I should have put this up as one of the slides, but how many of you guys have ever seen like a Great Dane playing with a Chihuahua? You know, some very large dog with a small dog. And the big dog flops on its back and just moves its head around while the small dog runs around and bites at it and yaps at it, right? That dog is self-handicapping, right? Great Dane can literally just break the Chihuahua in half with one bite, but he doesn't because he wants to play. Now, children inherently do this, and when we have a strong play culture, well-socialized children, they will try to make it so that everyone always is successful enough and feels safe enough in play to want the play to continue. When we take children and we professionalize them and put them in organized team sports at an early age, what we're doing is we're removing their ability to handicap the game and adjust the game and negotiate the rules of the game such that everyone is successful enough. And then what happens over time is that some of the kids don't get success and safety sufficiently, and they start to feel that physicality and sport is not for them. They start to feel that they're being punished every time that they're in this situation. We are negatively conditioning. We're using operant conditioning to destroy their love of physicality. We don't know that we're doing that. We're not trying to do that, but that's the impact of this system. And it's pernicious because you start at 6 years old or 5 years old and you put them in that sport. And then some of the kids are going to be successful. They're going to go on to the next level. Some of the kids are not going to feel successful. And this may have nothing to do with their long-term potential or talent either, right? Kids are just different developmentally. Some are going to develop early, some are going to develop late. Some kids are just younger, right? In a cohort. And so you can take a kid, and just because he happens to be born at a specific cutoff date, he's the youngest, and now he's getting punished every time that he's out there and playing. And then we take the kids who are successful and we put them in select soccer. We put them in more selective soccer, and we're constantly just basically burning children out. So I have so many people who came to me who were hyper competitive athletes at 13, 14, 15, even 16 years old. And then all of a sudden they lost interest in it. It just became too much. They weren't successful enough, and they completely lost their access to this thing that had been a source of incredible joy for them for years and years and years. So we have a problem that we are not only not recognizing the type of movement that is motivational, that's going to get people to want to move, but we're actually acting to destroy those aspects of ourselves. And this is a huge part of all of that, of why we have these health problems that I outlined at the beginning of this lecture. So that is the basic architecture of why we need to change the way that we're thinking about movement. We need to recognize what's intrinsically motivational, right? We need to look at human beings as animals that have a nature. We need to understand that movement is not just exercise, and you can't isolate out pieces of it. You need a whole food movement diet. You need to move using all the aspects of movement that we evolve with. So we need to use evolution as our guide. So that is our discussion for today. In the next one, we're going to be talking about the idea that movement is actually critical, not only to physical health, not only to the cell, but to the psyche. And that we have a overarching problem in this culture of a sense of meaninglessness and alienation. And that movement practice can be far more than just fitness. It can actually be a fundamental place in which we cultivate a capacity to have meaning in our life. And we're actually going to argue that it is probably the most fundamental place that we can start that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on Thursday. So I'm really excited to see all of you guys on Thursday. So I think that Andrew is set up to give you guys the free the merch giveaway. So Andrew, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us who was the winner of the prizes? Andrew, you there?
Hello. How is everybody?
Sorry, I muted you there, Andrew. Try again.
There we go. All right. Am I in now? Can you guys hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. Give me a thumbs up in the video. Okay, I see some people coming in. Awesome. Awesome. We are having some good stuff come through. All right. So we are doing a giveaway. Thank you guys for being so patient. And then after we do the giveaway, we're also going to do some questions. I saw a couple of questions coming through in the chat, and we will definitely be getting into all that stuff afterwards, and then we'll just stick around, and we want to support you guys for all this wonderful adventure that we have going on. So yeah, we have a bunch of people already saying thank you, Rafe. This is awesome. So of course we're excited to. I'm always excited to hear all the good stuff that we got going on. So the entries. All right. So first, while I'm pulling up some of this. I wanted to like print these out and then like actually like pull the name out of the hat a bit more dramatic, but we ran out of time. So maybe for the next giveaway, we're going to do something a bit more fun like that. But I'll just tell you a little bit about what we did. So we have right now about 130 people on the call. That's live on Zoom. There's other people on Facebook and on the website. And I also saw that there was a couple people who were having some issues getting in the first place. And so normally what we would say is you got to join live to get the giveaway. But because there were some technical difficulties on our end, if you are watching this afterwards and you are the winner, then it's okay. It's our fault. I'm sorry. But we will make sure to get you the prize. And so we had, let's see. So far for this giveaway for the merch, we are going to be giving, this is a $50 gift card towards anything in our merch store. You know, here's a couple examples of what we have going on. Over 260 people is that list of people that we were combing through of who's qualifying for this. And so let me pull open my list now to see who we have. Are you ready? This is, all right. Do we have a Hanny Chang on the call? Hanny, am I saying your name right?
Don't see Hanny on the call.
Hanny Chang. If not, then we will make sure to connect with you after the call, and we will make sure to get you all the fun giveaways. If you are hearing this in the replay, then you can also email support@evolvemoveplay.com, and we will make sure to get you connected with your prizes. And so if you are somebody else who is not Hanny Chang, we also have some other fun stuff for you as well. And so, Rafe, do you want to talk a little bit about what this next piece is that we have for everybody, just in case you guys haven't seen it yet? And then again, we do have some more prizes coming out again next week based on some of the content that we're getting into during this Revolution series.
Cool. Justine, can you move it back to me? So you're seeing my face here with this. So you may have seen this already, but everybody who's on the webinar, who registered for the webinar, has access to this free online course, Move Like a Human. We've had really amazing response to this. It's just a fundamental look at how we can get started with basic practices of what are the big aspects of how we move ourselves in the environment: walking, running, jumping, and climbing. So yeah, we're going to start you guys with that. And what we really would love to have you guys do is take videos of your training and put them up on the Facebook group, put them up on Instagram, and tag us. What we're going to do is we're going to use that engagement as the guide to giving away the big prizes, which are going to be access to our online academy and access to a retreat. So that's what's going on. There's a ton of rich resources for you guys. You can get started doing this, right? We've talked all day about how important it is to move like this, how much value this is going to give you, why it's congruent with your nature. And we're going to give you guys a tool to get started with it right now. Anything you want to add, Andrew? You are muted.
Oh yeah. Here we go. All right, now I'm back. All right. So yes, the Move Like a Human program. We've had some phenomenal response to this. People are saying that it's really changing the way that they relate to their movement, engage in the natural world all around them. And normally this program is a $97 program. That price is probably actually going up in the future as well, but we are giving it access to all of you guys for free just for this limited window while we're doing the during this movement revolution, so that you guys can make some of these ideas and stuff that we're talking about more tangible. You can go off, you can experience all of it, you can experience a little bit of it, jump to the area that makes sense to you. But yeah, we definitely want to come together more as a community. And one of the best ways that we can do that is by seeing your videos, commenting on each other's stuff. And that also shows that you really like this community, you want to be involved in it, and you're going to really get something out of the academy. If you're getting something out of this, if you're looking for a little bit more, you're going to love the academy, and we'll get more into all that stuff later. Same for like the retreats as well. We were talking about, somebody is asking about USA only. This is open internationally. So we have people from UK, from Australia, from all across the US. So anybody can get involved.
Yeah.
So Hungary, oh, we got some people from Hungary, yeah, all over Europe. So yeah, we're really excited about all this. So you do have access on this. You can get access to this on the overview or bonus page on the website. So there's all the links at the top. And it's just that first one. It's also in the emails. If you click on the button, Experience the Movement Revolution, something like that in this signature, will also be at the end of all the emails. There's also just a link that we're going to be sending up here. So yeah, that's a little bit about this.
Oh,
We lost you, Rafe.
yeah, well, you lost my video. My
Lost your video. All right.
I'm back.
Back.
It's been amazing since the Embody Movement Summit. The engagement of our community on Evolve Move Play has just been incredible. Like, there's so many people who are ready for this message. We've been, you know, I started Evolve Move Play in September, so this month of 2013. So this is the 7th year anniversary of this, and you know, we always had this amazing response from people that we shared it with, but it was hard to get kind of the critical numbers to build a community. And because when we go out and then we teach a retreat in nature, we can only take up to 20 people. So it's hard to get enough people. But what we're seeing now through the Embody Movement Summit is just like, there's so many people who are ready for this message. And it's been incredibly gratifying to watch the response and see so many people just pour out how meaningful this is to them, and how it's changing things for them, and how they're like another person out climbing a tree for the first time, feeling like they have permission, or recognizing how socially inhibited they did feel, and how, whoa, like that's an epiphany, and you know, I'm letting that limit me, and I have people now who I can reach out to and get support from. So Andrew mentioned that aspect of community, and we just find that it's already happening, and we're so excited about seeing it happening, and we're just really excited about this next step as well. And yeah, seeing all you guys take on this program, that's why we're giving it away for free.
Cool. So Rafe, let's go on to what we have coming up. While you're doing that, a lot more people just saying thank you in the chat. Shout out to Anlene in Germany, and we had Laurice from Canada. I saw also London, Spain, France, Spain. Yeah, we got people from all over. So loved all this.
A couple of asks from you guys, which is if you could, you know, let us know what your #1 takeaway was, and again, share your movement, and you know, hashtag us, at us, let us know what's going on. Really excited about that.
And this is how we can see like who's getting involved in this community. We want you to share your experiences of something that really impacted you. Share that with your friend. Maybe you don't feel comfortable posting it all over Instagram or all over Facebook. That's fine. You can just share it with one other person and invite them to join you in your experience as well. And that's just also awesome. We're going to be looking at this kind of stuff when we're giving away the next prize. So yeah, you can use the hashtag, share your biggest takeaway, share your movement, and next winner will be announced on the 4th workshop next week.
So yeah, now questions. I saw something like 130 comments or 140 comments come in. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer 140. I don't know how many of those are actually questions. Andrew and Justine hopefully have been kind of selecting from those, so you guys can feed me some questions. But I'm really excited to hear what came up for you guys and what you'd like me to talk about.
Yeah, and so I did pull out a couple that I did notice were questions coming through. I'll feed you some, Rafe. But yeah, anybody else who has questions about anything at all related to the talk, feel free to just drop those right into the chat, and we'll be combing through those as well. Just start it with either all caps question or a Q, and then put your thing in there. That'll just make it easier for us to be able to spot them, pull those out. One of the questions I saw earlier, Rafe, some people were asking about the resources that you mentioned. You were mentioning an author of, I think it was a playbook. I don't have that exact.
So I have a reading list that we can send you guys that I can share. I mentioned Katie Bowman, who's her book is called Move Your DNA. She has 2 books that I highly recommend, multiple books that I highly recommend, but Move Your DNA is amazing. Movement Ecology is amazing, or Movement Matters. And also Barefoot, Whole Body Barefoot is really worth picking up as well for everyone. And then she has other books like about diastasis recti that are going to be, really useful for specific people, but not necessarily for everybody. So that's it. I also talked about Jaak Panksepp. Jaak Panksepp's book is called Effective Neuroscience. That's quite a dense read. You might only want to read the chapter on play. It's very technical, but you can read a lot about his research and a lot of other people's research around play that is very useful in a couple of books I highly recommend. One is Play by Stuart Brown, and the other is The Exuberant Animal by Frank Farancich. As part of this webinar series, we can send out the full reading list that I have built for people who come to our retreats, right? But we'll just mention those on the calls for you right now. Andrew, you're muted again.
We can make that resource available for you guys. I'll put it on the bonus page when we get that together.
I just want to jump in here because this is actually really exciting to me because
Let's do it.
I love sharing books and I love sharing resources. And I think that one of the things we're going to be doing going forward, this is a little bit further down the line, but we're going to have a kind of book club through Evolve, Move, Play. So we're going to have, we're going to be offering, when we do a podcast, we're going to be offering a program where we're going to be offering you notes on the podcast and action guides to the podcast. And as part of that, we're also going to be offering like recommended readings and like discussions of those readings. So we're going to have a membership system where we're going to get together on a call once or twice a month, and we're going to, we'll be able to like go into the readings that we've done and discuss them. So, we can discuss a John Vervaeke article, we can discuss Jaak Panksepp, we can discuss all these things. And I'm actually incredibly excited about that and about curating all these ideas for you in a way that's more interactive and more networked going forward. So that's kind of like, I'm letting the cat out of the bag a little bit for things that are down the road, but it's just really exciting. So I know that people get super engaged by this, and this is something we feel like we have so much, it's just such a good match to what I love doing and what people are asking for me. So I can't wait to get into that. Andrew, unmute yourself.
And if you're one of those people who are excited about this idea of a book club and what are like the key excerpts from the best books, you want to experience more of this, join in the conversation with the Evolve, Move, Play community, let us know as well. The more excitement that we hear from you guys, the more ideas and the more inspiration that fuels in us to just be able to take everything to the next level to support you guys even more. So if you're feeling any of that, then always let us know. Another question that we have coming in here, let's see. We have a big takeaway from Sarah about how important hanging is for the shoulders. Shout out from Kansas City, Missouri. We have a question from Sarah as well, asking, when you say meaningful movement, is fun meaningful enough to make a movement practice happen?
That's going to be a lot of, we'll go deep into that next time. I think fun works really well for children. And I think as we go into adulthood, we need to remember it. We need to come back to it. But we also need some more long-term archetypal goals, and we need to have a deeper idea of the virtue that we're trying to bring into ourselves. I think that fun alone can end up being a misleading guide. It's very powerful. It's really important, but it's not the whole thing.
Cool. Yeah, you guys are really going to love that workshop coming up here on Thursday, USA time, 2 days from now. So that'll go a lot deeper.
Very deep.
Very deep. Yeah, you'll come in with like, oh, I wonder if I've really thought much about this. Then you'll leave with like, whoa, the world is a new place now. And so we're going to love having those conversations with you guys. It'll be fun.
I just had a chat with John Vervaeke where we were going over all of my notes for that because I wanted to get his talk about it. So it is a deeper articulation of a lot of the ideas than I've ever achieved before, and a synthesis of some of the major strands behind my thinking. And I'm really excited to share with you guys.
Cool. Yeah, it'll be a fun time. I'm keeping an eye on the time here. I want to let you guys know that we'll stay here. We're going to keep chatting with you, but some of you do have to go. If you do, we loved having you. In terms of a replay, it's going to take us a little bit to just get the pieces in place, but we are going to be, if you're listening to this now, we are going to make a replay available for you guys. And maybe a couple other bonuses there as well. So if you're short on time or something, we're gonna have some fun stuff for you. So you can keep your eyes out for those bonuses. They will be for sure ready by tomorrow. If everything goes well, we might even have that a bit sooner. Sometimes these things can happen rather quickly. So we have people loving the reading list. So before this next question, so how can, Keaton's asking how I can connect more with the Evolve, Move, Play community. Keaton, this week, the best way to get involved is either on Instagram and sharing your movement, biggest takeaways from the summit, or inside the Facebook groups, same kind of thing. And then at the end of this series, we're gonna be talking more about the way to really get involved into a deeper level with us, where we're gonna be taking the community element to the next level. And we think you'll really enjoy it, but we won't worry about that right now. Over these next 2 weeks, we got a bunch of free stuff for you, and the Facebook groups and Instagram is the best way. And then of course, just joining us right here on Zoom. So Rafe, Angel asks about the overuse of sunscreen and how you're feeling about this.
Yeah, don't wear sunscreen when you don't need it. that's my thing. Like, so I'm mostly English by ancestry, but I actually have Portuguese and African ancestry. So my skin tends to do pretty well with the sun. So I pretty much don't wear it. And my children have lucked into having a little bit darker complexions for lighter skinned people. So we pretty much don't use sunscreen unless we are going to, like, say, go high in elevation when we haven't been high in elevation, or go to a new climate. We try to get regular sun exposure. I don't think that the sun is bad for you unless you overdose on it, like a lot of things, right? Like many things that are nutritious are very unnutritious when you're overdosed on it. So water can kill you. You can drink too much water. Same thing with the sun. So when you, basically what happens a lot is it's kind of like the hand thing, right? People go, they go from too much to too little to too much. So you sit inside in an office for weeks on end, and then you go on vacation and you expose yourself to 24 hours of sun, and you get badly burned. And that's going to cause all sorts of problems. But if you make sure you're getting regular sun exposure as much as possible, then you're much less likely to burn, and then it's healthier for you and you're getting what you need. So if you are a very fair-skinned person and you're living in a very sunny climate, right? Say you're a red-haired person of Irish descent living in Northern Australia, sunscreen's an important tool. If you're a black person living in Seattle, on the other hand, you need to really, really think about how you're getting as much sun exposure as you can, because it's really problematic to not get enough.
Cool. So we got, like, just so everybody's aware, I'm seeing like another 30 comments in here. So we got some fun times ahead. This is an easy one. Laura Des, I'm sorry if I'm saying the names wrong. You're asking what platform you can upload the videos of yourselves to. You can just even go straight right up to Facebook, right up to Instagram. Use the hashtags and tag us so that we can find you easily, and we can get everything sorted out. But yeah, you can just go straight there. and then we'll be able to see your stuff. You can join in the community. Rafe Keaton's asking as well about there being like real life or in-person events across the country, particularly in the Pacific Northwest region. And so we kind of mentioned this a little bit. I'll hand off to you and then we'll go on to the next one.
Yeah, so right now we had 4 retreats planned this year, and we had to cancel 3 out of the 4. And we also had, I think, 8 traveling 2-day seminars planned, and we canceled all of those because of COVID-19. So when COVID-19 is no longer a threat, all of that's going to be coming back, and we're really, really excited to be able to share this stuff with you guys. I'm hopeful that we're going to see some light at the end of the tunnel on that in the next few months, and that we will be able to have our big summer event next August. I don't want to go too deeply into the science of COVID. There's a lot of uncertainty there, and that's not my specialty. But that's my personal take on it. So I do feel really hopeful that we're going to do that, and I'm also planning to, if that happens, I'm also planning to do a 3-month tour of Europe to share things with people. So yes, let's just all cross our fingers and pray that we can do this. We want to come out and meet you guys in person, and we're seeing so many cool spaces too. Like people are starting to upload their spaces. I'm like, I need to go visit Ohio to go jump around on these rocks and trees. I need to go to North Carolina. I need to go here because now we have a whole group mind that is exploring this stuff, and it's really beautiful to see. And I want to connect. I want to have deeper connection.
Yeah.
So I see a question here. I'll go ahead and answer because I have the chat up as well. So Jacob Crossman asks, what wholesome indoor exercises do you recommend to cultivate general strength? There's a little bit more subtlety to the thought other than just like only do natural movements. Okay. Think about the case of the sailor who's on a long-term boat, right? And they need vitamin C in order to survive, right? There's the evolutionary perspective phylogenetically, and then there's the perspective of how you've developed, right? What are you? So is it healthier to wear shoes or to be barefoot? Well, it's healthier for humans in general if we spend more time barefoot and we develop barefoot. But it's not necessarily healthy for you today to try this thing barefoot. And you may need to do training, and you may need to slowly transition out of that. So we have these general rules. We always try to train in the most natural way that we can that allows us to develop the way that we can. We always try to train with the highest level of complexity. But we don't throw away useful tools because they're not as natural, right? Sometimes you need the supplement. Sometimes the supplement's what gets you through the fact that you have to live a very unnatural lifestyle, right? If you sit on your butt for 12 hours a day, going out and doing 45 minutes of natural movement is a good start, but it won't necessarily get you everything that you would have got if you had spent your whole life developing. And sometimes you have to use targeted tools. So squats, deadlifts, weighted pull-ups, basic gymnastic strength exercises, all these things are really good. We're big advocates of them. And we're going to put out a whole system, actually, of courses around what we call the elastic strength concept, how we use those tools specifically to facilitate the skill work that we do. The thing is that doing squats or deadlifts can make you massively stronger, and that can have incredible, powerful, and really beneficial effects. And it can also set yourself up for injury by creating proportional weakness problems and creating stiffness in the body when it's not applied correctly. So we want to find that balance between these things. So we want the whole food diet, and then we want the supplementation that addresses the needs of that individual athlete. So that's the answer to the first part of that. And then the second aspect of this question is, what is my opinion on the GOATA system? So that means greatest of all time athletes. I don't know a lot about it. I've seen it a lot. I'm actually friends with Joel Smith, who I'm a huge fan of his approach to sprinting. And he's very close with Darian Barr, who's kind of the exact opposite in their thinking around the biomechanics. My general perspective is that a lot of the approaches that are out there rely on an overly biomechanical approach that doesn't understand the evolutionary context of the human being and the capacity for self-organization. And that's what that looks like a little bit to me. We need to be more open to allowing the variation of how people solve movements and less looking to find specific patterns and thinking kind of just from biomechanics as opposed to other perspectives. Andrew, do you have another question for me?
There we go. Okay, yeah. This mic thing, we're getting it. So yeah, we do have one. Both Lisa and Tony are both excited about the idea of play being an exercise and are looking for more info on how does this apply to an older population that are seeking to stay as fit as possible.
Yeah, so kind of the last answer sort of goes right into it. It's like, you want to add the, well, let me give you, actually, I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction, okay? When we look at food, our general guideline is that if it existed for us evolutionarily, it's healthy for us. And that's true, except when it's not true, right? So if you've had developmental problems and you've had stressors and you've developed a leaky gut and you've got some of these problems, then there might be foods that are very healthy in one context that can be unhealthy for you. And they might be perfectly natural foods. So for instance, I've had IBS in, symptoms and issues, which I actually think was because of abuse of ibuprofen. When I was training hard early on in my training career, I was told by a naturopathic doctor actually to just take 600 milligrams of what she called vitamin A, every day in order to control inflammation in my body. It turns out that that ibuprofen is incredibly damaging to the gastrointestinal system. It's also damaging to the sex hormone system. So highly don't recommend using lots of NSAIDs. But I developed IBS symptoms, and what allowed me to cure my IBS symptoms was going on the carnivore diet. And that is not to say that the carnivore diet is optimally healthy or what's natural for a human being, or that eating vegetables or fruits is bad for you. For most people, eating fruit is good. But for me, for instance, peaches and dates were very dangerous to eat at a certain point. They would irritate my gut really deeply. So it's the same thing for you as you, movement-wise, right? So climbing, really healthy movement, unless you have like very specific shoulder issues, right? And then you need to address those shoulder issues in a more targeted and specific way as you develop. So with someone who is, say, in their 60s and maybe has a history of injuries and sedentism, I'm going to still try to get them moving in the environment. I'm going to still try to get them moving on all fours. I'm going to still try to get them hanging in some way, but it's going to be scaled appropriately. And then we're going to be looking for what is revealed. Where is the weaknesses in their system, and how do we approach filling in those weaknesses with a more targeted approach? And that's where the supplementation comes in. Right? So for me, for instance, with IBS, a supplement that I needed was like collagen. I needed to like drink lots of bone broth. And that's really good for my belly. You don't have to have bone broth to have a healthy diet, unless you have a problem, right? You don't have to take a collagen supplement. Does that make sense? We use this as the overarching paradigm, and then we plug in these tools. But the paradigm actually gives us the information. If I don't know how you move in a natural way or where you're limited naturally, I actually don't know what you need. I don't know where to start with giving you isolated exercises. So that's kind of how I would approach helping people as they older. And I want to say this, that age, the idea that age is just a number is clearly wrong, but the idea that we have to age in the way that we see people around us, aging, is also very wrong. When we look at hunter-forager populations, they are fit and strong right up to the point that they die. And that is possible for us too. We are suffering from prolonged atrophy of our bodies, from not using them. That's what's happening with aging in the West. I saw a video, I posted it in the EMP group, of a guy who looked like he was in his 70s, and he climbs up a palm tree, beautiful tree climber. He climbs this palm tree, and then he swings the palm tree back and forth and catches another palm tree, transfers to the other palm tree, and then completely lets go, and then catches the palm tree again and slides to the bottom. And he pops off grinning and laughing, right? Like, this is who you want to be when you're 70 years old. I had a guy come to one of my workshops who's 73 years old, and he had been running his own like solo sail fishing boat his whole life. And so he'd been running and doing all these things, just being super physical. And he happened to fall out of a tree. He fell 10 feet flat on his back. He pops up, smiling, laughing, does the rest of the workshop. No problems. Right? How many 73-year-olds have that kind of robustness? You can have that. You need natural movement really to get there. So we can all do this. We can all develop. There are parkour athletes. Another thing I want to say is look up this guy who started skateboarding when he was like 65 years old. He's like 73 now, and he's doing crazy cool skateboarding. It's possible, right? You don't have to give up. You can grow at any age.
Cool. So for the people who are in that area, they're looking to build their robustness. If they're 45 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus, would you say that a program like MLH is a good, like the Move Like a Human program we're offering for free to everyone? Is that a good place for people to go in to just kind of generally see, where are my deficiencies at, or should they have like a more tangible tools or something else that they can go to?
I think generally, yes, right? If you are currently suffering chronic pain, right, of a substantial portion, you have an injury, or you have a recent history of getting lots of injuries, then you're going to want something that's more targeted. You're going to want to work specifically with a coach, right? And we can help you identify people in your area who have the specific skill sets that can help you. There's no tool that's the perfect tool for everybody, but that particular tool is very easy to adopt and scale for a really large percentage of people.
And then just for the other side of the spectrum, if somebody is like 15 or 20 and they've been an athlete for a long time, how would they relate with the Move Like a Human program?
I still think you're going to get a lot out of it initially, right? Because it's like a multivitamin, right? Or not even multivitamin. It's like liver, right? Grass-fed beef liver. It's just got all the things that your body needs in it. And what we discover, what's interesting about athletes actually is that a lot of athletes, we have this, I think of modern life as a series of overuse and underuse injuries. We're sort of constantly asked to be very far outside of balance line. I'm in this situation right now. Like we're launching our online academy. I'm preparing for the embodiment conference. I've worked 14-hour days the last 5 days in a row. Right? So I've been sitting at my computer almost that entire time. That's not healthy. That's not healthy. So a little bit of Move Like a Human would be very good for me. And I can be very, very fit, right? So I can still, like I can walk outside right now and do a backflip, and I can go and deadlift 350 pounds. But I'm actually less healthy than I was a week ago because of what I've been doing in my life. And a lot of athletes, like professional athletes, are suffering from a lack of health because they're not getting regular movement nutrition, even though they're getting hyper nourished in specific ways, right? So football players and NBA players and MLB players, they play these games, they're very intense, and then they have to sit and watch film and sit on buses and sit on planes and have their sleep disturbed. And it's very unhealthy. So being an athlete is no guarantee that you've actually got a balance of the nourishments that you need. I love Paul Chek's 4 doctors. You need Dr. Movement, Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Happy. And you can be a really good athlete and train yourself to a very high fitness. And if you're not taking care of those other 3 aspects, you're breaking yourself down and you're not going to be able to sustain it long term. But within movement, you can also be hyper using specific movement patterns. And when you add something like Move Like a Human, you're going to be expanding the set of nourishments that your body's taking in.
I really like how you were describing that for the athletes. Like you could be a pro level NBA or even NFL athlete, but you're sitting in your bus the whole time. There's so much other nutrients that are just being missed. I like how you articulated that.
Yeah.
We have a question from Hazel, who's asking logistically how she can share the talk with friends who missed it. If you just send them to evolvemoveplay.com/revolution, then they can join it. They can sign in with their email, and maybe later today, definitely tomorrow, we're going to have a replay available and some other bonuses as well. So if you have anybody who you want to go through this experience with as well, if you have insights that you're generating, you want to share them with your friend, like Hazel, like you're talking about, then yeah, feel free to send them to evolvemoveplay.com/revolution, and then you guys can go through this journey together, and that's just also helping everybody else build the community. Rafe, Rob is asking more about the underlining goal of Evolve Move Play, and so this is how he's articulating it, and hoping that you can fill in the gaps for him, and I'm sure we'll get more into this as well. But he's wondering if the goal of EMP is to reconnect to our human nature, and he's wondering if that's a good way to summarize all this, or if there's more nuance in there.
As a first approximation, it's a pretty good one. There's more to it, and that's what we're going to go into in the next one. Fundamentally, we talk about two things, like we're trying to reconnect to what matters most, right? And to understand what matters most to a human being, you have to understand the nature of a human being. But we're also trying to help people engage with the process of self-transformation so that they can grow into something more, so they can grow forward. And that, we think, is extremely important for developing meaning in life. So ultimately, I said that I was listening to a conversation I had with John Vervaeke, and I said in that interview that the optimal practice is a practice that helps you fall more deeply in love with the most important aspects of life. That if you achieve that, that's the best way that a practice could serve you. And I think that's probably the best summary of what we're really trying to build. So I wanted to say something, because there are so many questions. There may be over 200 comments in this thread at this point. So there's kind of no way that we can do this. So what I was thinking was we could actually take this chat and we can go through and farm the questions out, and we could film another just straight Q&A with all the the questions that kind of come up are very clearly articulated, because we're not gonna get through them all. So I just thought, let me know, guys, if you think that'd be, if you'd like us to do that, and just do that as a little bonus to go back and review it, because we've never had so much engagement, which is amazing, but it's impossible to keep up with. So give me a little thumbs up if you'd like us to go back and film a Q&A based off of this.
Yeah, we could probably even go live maybe tomorrow around the same time. If you think that'll work for you, Rafe? Like the 1 p.m.
I have an interview at the same time tomorrow. Someone's interviewing me, so I can't do the same time tomorrow. But
well, we'll work out the details, and then we'll email it out to you guys. Because yeah, we do have a ton of feedback in here in the chat. Yeah, we can definitely download this and comb through it a little bit more and take some more questions on the call tomorrow.
So Kareem Ford asks, what do I think about gymnastics as a kind of whole body development system, specifically the pommel horse and the rings? So I actually started as a movement teacher, as a gymnastics teacher. I started training gymnastics when I was 15 years old after watching the 1996 Olympics, seeing Carrie Strug do her thing. And I got really into it. And I taught from 21 to 25, I think. And that's what I was teaching there, that I kind of discovered parkour. I think in many ways, gymnastics is kind of a parallel to parkour, but it is less natural. It is more artificial. And the pommel horse is very hard to understand. Nobody knows what the hell's going on unless you've really trained gymnastics. It took me a long time, and I had to work with some high-level coaches to really understand what was going on in the pommel horse. It's beautiful, and it's incredible what they do on the pommel horse, and it's very unrelated to anything else. There's nothing else that you can do that will make you good at pommel horse, and there's very little that pommel horse will make you good at. It's not a natural human movement. You're going to be really strong. You're going to have a good sense of rhythm. There's some things, but it's a pretty low transfer exercise. Rings, on the other hand, are an incredible tool to develop the strength of the body. Very closely related to our function as brachiating animals. They're one of the most powerful supplementary tools that we can use to prepare athletes. And this is something we see, like the rings, I think, go back to preparation for soldiers in, like 3,000 years ago in China. And then, so I'm a big fan of those as a supplementary tool. Pommel horse is fun to play around with, like learning some of the basic tricks, I think would be useful. But the higher level pommel horse stuff is a completely different world. And then we got, what is the general approach on yoga in terms of movement and nourishing the body? Yoga is always a difficult one. People are so in love with yoga, and it's such a cultural presence, but it's a little bit, I have mixed feelings about yoga. Both my parents were yoga teachers. My dad almost died after catching malaria while visiting ashrams in India. Yoga yoga means the yoke, right? And it's not originally a physical practice. It's one of the 7 schools of Vedanta, which is what is traditionally referred to as Hinduism, right? So it's a religious practice, and it's a wisdom tradition. And the hatha yoga, the asanas, is part of a set of practices, including breath work and meditation. And as a group of practices, I think it's a really wonderful example of how we build this ecology of practices that we're going to talk about in the next workshop. A lot of the asanas that are done now are not necessarily even from the original tradition of yoga, and are actually more related potentially to Swedish gymnastics. And they kind of come from the melding of the East and West. And as yoga has come to the West, it's retained a lot of its, some of the brand comes from the spirituality, but a lot of times the spirituality has been pulled out of it. And mostly what people are doing is physical manipulation of themselves. So some of those are really, so aspects of it, sitting in an asana and being able to open up, change the fascia, being able to deal with tension and control your breath are really amazing tools. And then there's also this thing where people get stuck on a mat, which is a totally unnatural place. They do very specific movements and get very, very attached to specific alignments. And they can actually stretch in ways that take away the natural elasticity and explosiveness of the body. So you want to stretch such that your nervous system is communicated with to be able to increase its motor control at longer ranges of motion, right? But there's also something that can happen when you stretch where you actually turn off your stretch shortening cycle, and you can overstretch joint capsules. And so this can be actually, a lot of really high level yogis I know have chronic back pain and chronic hip pain because they have tried to use it as basically it's a skill expression of being able to fold yourself into more and more pretzel-y pieces. So this, I think, is a dangerous thing. Aaron Cantor, who's one of our good friends with one of our apprentices here with Evolve Move Play and an amazing movement teacher. He's a really high-level yogi, and he walked away from that world because of these things he saw. But he can also talk a lot to some of the really amazing value within it. I also am going to do an interview with my friend Jeppe Skogo, who's a parkour athlete who then went into yoga and taught yoga and talks a lot about the connection between the idea of the yoke and creating meaning and how that all sort of plays out in the Jungian sense. So I need to know more about yoga. I think it's a really interesting example of an ecology of practices, and I want to dig deeper into it. And yet I also think that there's ways in which it's treated in the West, which are not very healthy for people. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
So
I want to answer this question here.
yeah, go ahead.
Broke ass, you mentioned dance. What would be the approach on contact improvisation and movement developed by Steve Paxton and Nancy Stark-Smith? Steve Paxton's awesome. I have enormous admiration for him. I don't, again, this is a thing that I'd like to know more deeply, but we actually use contact improvisation in our method. So what we've discovered is that there's so much to learn in that ability to listen well to another person and to have rapport with another person in moving with them improvisationally. And we find it an incredibly rich place to build kinesthetic awareness of the body, awareness of communication with another person. But I've been kind of, my development there has been interesting because I first discovered this through my friend Frosty Zernow, who had us all at a parkour gathering. We were all at a parkour jam, and he's like, let's play a game. I'm gonna throw you into this series of obstacles, and you're gonna do your thing through it, and then come out and then initiate somebody else. So we played this game for a long time, and I knew very little about contact improv, but we were playing contact improv parkour. And then when I started Evolve Move Play, I ran into Shira Yaziv, who's an amazing capoeirista, who then went into ecstatic dance and contact improv. And so she trained me. And then I learned also contact improvisation ideas from Tom Wexler and Josef Frusik. So I've gotten most of my contact improv through this movement culture space, but it's become a huge aspect of how we teach that interactive work. And what I know about Steve Paxton and what he did is incredibly awesome and admirable, but it's actually something I need to dig deeper into. So we have I think that our culture of contact improv is quite different from some of the stuff you'll experience at contact jams, but we use it as a tool, and it's a really wonderful tool. So that's a little bit about that.
So we have a number of different questions in here about basically the impact on kids, and I'm just going to highlight Michael Mast's question here as an example for several of the questions that were coming up around kids. And he was saying that when he's teaching his niece different forms of movement that he's also learning himself, she picks up the bear walk really quickly, and he had the idea to lay down a strip of painter's tape to help her learn balance. But he's wondering if there is if there's a way that he can make that type of activity more playful and less like, here's a drill that you need to go and do.
Yeah, make it play. So play tag, right? Or play a game, or pretend to be an animal. Say, we're gonna pretend to be bears and make up a scenario and a whole story. Children love narrative play. And they will generally, when they're engaged in locomotive play or other types of play, a lot of times they will add a narrative element to it. And you can, very frequently, you can get on a child's level and initiate and create fun play if you can tap into that silly narrative side of it, right? So if you want your kid to do bear walks with you, like, invent a whole story about how you guys are bears, right? I actually have a really great video on our YouTube channel, 10 ways to keep your kids active during quarantine, where you can see some of the games that me and my kids play. And you can also see the way that we interact with them. So for folks who are interested in that, that's a good resource. I think that when it's actually like a real danger when we're working with kids, this desire to teach them. I fight this all the time with my own kids, because oftentimes the best way that I can prevent my kids from wanting to do something is to try to get them to do it, all right? The best way that I can do it is to, like, go do it and then, like, even be a little resistant to them coming, right? So they feel like, oh, wow, this is special, I got invited in. So when my son loves to come with me to do parkour, and when he comes, I don't try to teach him at all right now. He's young. When he gets older, we'll do more teaching. He's 6 years old. But I have the rule that he can't interrupt me. He has to be self-sufficient. And, you know, and he feels like it's a privilege to be out there with me. So I'll give him the space to do it his way. And children, you know, I found that really powerful. I found so often people are trying to kind of like project what they want onto their children instead of trying to invite in a space where they can discover what their children want and let them do it. They want to play, they want to be physical. A lot of times it's about just breaking them out of the things that prevent it, like getting them away from a TV, getting them away from video games. Whenever it comes to children, I always love the passage from Khalil Gibran on children. Look up that book. It's called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And, you know, he says, speak to us of children. And he says, your children come through you, but they come not from you. And you can seek to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For your children's souls dwells in the house of tomorrow that you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. Right? And they are the arrows, and you're the bow that God uses to send them forth upon the path of the infinite. And let your bending in his hands be for joy, for he loves the bow even as he loves the arrow that flies. Something like that. And it's just an extraordinarily beautiful passage, but I think it really speaks to this idea that when we make space for who the child wants to be, rather than our idea of what we want out of the child, it works so much better.
Yeah, I like that. Just a recap, I might say is, at least for me, is restraining that urge to teach and allowing basically the children to form their own identities as you're maybe going through this play environment together.
Yeah. And remember, don't get attached to the learning objective, right? Get attached to the process with the child. Children are not super goal oriented, not when they're young. They're process oriented. And if they're having fun, then they're going to want to come back to the process over and over again, right? So if you pay attention to what's making the child feel joy in movement, then they're going to want to move. If you pay attention to whether they're doing the movement right and whether they're doing enough of the movement and they're doing the movements that you want, then they're not going to want to move.
Cool. So the chat just keeps coming in. I love all this stuff. So probably if you guys have any other questions, again, we're going to download this. We're going to do another Q&A call just to kind of go through this and maybe take some more stuff. So if you do have any more questions, definitely drop those into the chat and we'll keep going through those and we'll have another call tomorrow. But what do you think, Rafe? Maybe we'll do another 2 or 3 questions.
One more question, and let's call it for today because we've done an hour of Q&A, which is amazing. Like, thank you guys. Like, the passion is incredible, and we will probably, now that we know that there's a hunger for it, we'll make this happen more often. But yeah, we have lots of things that we need to build for you guys so that we can take the next step in this process.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this one is kind of on theme of the original talk.
Yeah.
So I might bring this one up unless you had one in mind.
Nope.
But Hazel's asking about the association that Whole Foods have with privilege and is wondering in the context of Whole Food movement if there might be a similar association where there's a bias towards people who either have the time or money to access it.
Let's say yes and no, right? The ground outside is free. The trees outside are free. One of the things that's incredibly powerful about parkour is that you don't have to pay to do it, right? Now we're going to pitch you guys on buying our online academy, and we think it's really valuable. But we also think that it's incredibly important that we're building people who have independence over time, and that people feel like they can access this. You're going to get a big advantage by working with a coach. But if you can't and you're just totally unable to afford it, one, let us know. and we'll try to work with you. But 2, don't feel like it's denied to you. This started, like parkour starts with kids in the banlieues of Paris, right? The founders of parkour, David Bell, Yann Natro, Shao Bell, Williams Bell, Malik Diouf, Charles Perrier, Guyan Nibiaku. These guys are New Caledonian, West African, and Vietnamese and French Vietnamese. And they grew up in the poorest communities on the outskirts of Paris. A lot of them came from traumatized backgrounds. And they discovered that by testing themselves against the environment, they could make themselves into stronger human beings. And there's nothing that's more available than that, right? It requires no equipment. You don't have to sign up for any leagues. It's incredibly empowering to people. So, and the same is true of a lot of this. You may not have as much access to nature, but there is nature in the city, and we can help you find that. And even the food thing, right? Like, people can make gardens, right? Urban gardening is a thing too. So I think that there's truth to the idea of food deserts. And my friend Caitlin Pontrella, she's a huge advocate for helping parkour penetrate underserved communities. And she talks about these idea of movement deserts, right? Areas that don't have playing fields, areas that don't have some of these things. And it's an important conversation, and it's something that like it's really valuable to address. And also I worry that sometimes when we frame it too much in this idea of privilege, we ignore the agency that allowed these underprivileged kids in France to go out and make this thing theirs that we all benefit from. So so I think we need, I could get really caught up in this topic, but I think that we need to think about it in a way that recognizes the agency and power of people from all communities to make choices to have these things in their life, and that it comes from those communities.
Yeah, we have a lot of people coming in here just like, whoa, that was a good question. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of things to think about here. But when we do go into like, yeah, the roots of this are just so, I mean, it's like, what's the word? It's a grassroots movement, right? Yeah. Which is a, not pun intended, but it's very like, it's already in nature. It's very accessible. And that's everything where it started. And we can definitely go back to that. Yeah, there's so much nuance in here. There's definitely a lot of stuff that we can get into. And again, we are going to be going through all of your great questions. We'll do another call tomorrow to go deeper. And so if you guys have anything left, that like any other questions that are on your mind that you want to make sure that we can see before we go through, then drop those in the chat. We're 2 hours in and we still have like 50 people on the stream, which is just awesome. And I know in some parts of the world, some people are saying like it's past midnight for them. We got some other people in Australia, like they're getting ready to start their day. So this is just really cool. Rafe, why don't you paint the picture forward? What do we have coming up the next couple webinars, or sorry, next couple workshops? And then, yeah, we'll maybe if you have any final thoughts, we'll wrap it up, and we'll just kind of have our classic community farewell.
Yeah, so actually Paul asked the question, as well as what we should do for whole food movement, can you speak to the how about attitude, our inner organization, etc.? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about next, right? I mentioned this earlier in the call, but fundamentally, the body and the mind are not divisible. And in the same way that when we are undernourished with movement physically, it's going to result in disease, right? In dis-ease. The same thing is happening to us psycho-emotionally. and we have a crisis of meaning. People feel deeply alienated. People feel disconnected from what matters. People feel like the lives that we lead are surreal. And we actually think that movement is the most fundamental place that we can start changing that inner organization. This is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I've hesitated to say that movement is the most fundamental, because I think that's a really strong claim, and I wanted to be really clear about it. But after John Vervaeke's presentation and reading back through his ideas and going deeper into this, I actually believe that is true, and it's really important that we address it, and it's really neglected in our culture. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into that, going back to the roots of philosophy and Plato, and what this whole meaning thing is in our next one. So I really hope that we see all of you guys there. I cannot wait to share with you what we're doing. So that's what's coming up, and then once we lay that out, we are going to look at what that roadmap looks like. What are these pieces that we need to build, and how do we, if we forecast where the practice goes, what does that roadmap look like? That's what we're going to be looking at in the last one, in the second to last one, sorry, the third one. And then on the last one, we're going to be really talking about what's the next step to start your journey. So that's what's coming up. So yeah, I'm just incredibly inspired and touched to see you guys and to see the enthusiasm and to see how this is carried forward from the Embodied Movement Summit, to see so many of the people on here on this call. I think we had like 160 people at our peak, and now over 2 hours in, we're still at 43 people on this, and we must have had probably close to 300 comments, which is crazy. So this community is, I think it's important, and it's doing something really powerful, and I feel incredibly privileged to be able to help lead that for you guys. So thank you very much, and maybe we can all unmute ourselves and give ourselves a little hand for being here, and we look forward to seeing you guys maybe tomorrow, maybe on Thursday. So go ahead, unmute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Okay.
Where is this available?
Um,
Thank
A
you,
recording?
guys.
where is what available?
Where's the is this going to be made available, the recording?
Yeah, it'll be on Andrew, can you answer that?
Yeah, we'll be sending it out. We'll be sending out an email, and then it'll be on the website as well. So yeah, you can keep your eyes out for that email coming soon with all the bonus details. Thank you all for coming. Very excited to be a part of this awesome community, and you make that possible.
Thanks so much for organizing this and not dumbing it down. It's so easy for so many of these things to get cynical and try to just simplify it for the sake of making it more marketable. So I really love the integrative approach you guys are following.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. That's amazing feedback. Yeah, and guys, any like feedback, like comments, like you can send us your questions, but also we love it when we hear like, yeah, this made me inspired, this made me excited. All those testimonials are really inspire us to keep doing the work, and they're really useful for us in helping other people find what we're doing. So we really appreciate it. Anything you want to just send in and say, man, I really appreciated this thing. We'd be very excited about that.
And you can post that on Facebook, tag us. We'll probably, Justine, maybe you can make a thread afterwards. So like, what's your biggest number one takeaway from this first workshop? And then you guys can just drop all of your love in there. Any of the questions also that maybe you didn't get to drop it in the chat, or maybe you just want to really make sure that we address that on the bonus call. Then yeah, feel free to drop all those in there, and then we can go through all of them. And we want to make sure that every single one of you guys feel appreciated and heard, and that we're able to really come together as a community.
Wonderful. Okay. Justine, sign us off.
Hey, sounds good. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining
Bye.
us.
Thank you.